Hey, hi, Jess.
Hi.
Here we are. We decided that we wanted to come on for Valentine's Day and talk a little bit about chemistry.
Like
Yeah.
table salt and
Yeah, exactly, like table salt.
right, right. You just wrote an awesome article that was published in the Elephant Journal for those
Uh-huh.
interested. How did you start your article? Let's start there. Why don't we start there and we can take off?
Oh, I don't remember exactly where I started the article, but I do remember where the theory came from. So I'll just state the theory up front. It's more of a metaphor, but it's a very helpful metaphor. Is that if we think of romantic chemistry in terms of scientific chemistry, that romantic chemistry has the same properties and behaves the same exact way as scientific chemistry, it can hold us in a way and it can release rejection. Like molecules don't reject each other. And so we'll get into the theory a little bit
Mm.
more, but that's the basic thing is to think about romantic chemistry in terms of science.
So more
And
like objective versus subjective.
exactly, it's totally
Hmm.
objective.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you and I, let's take us, not that we're romantic, but that we have a certain type of chemistry. And we always have. We've probably had it since the day we met.
Mm.
And it's pretty much the same. We've developed it, we've invested in it, but the basic feeling between us is a really strong vibe. We have really strong chemistry with each other.
You even see that in language. Like from the minute I saw you, I was drawn to you.
Yeah.
Like that draw, that's a chemical reaction, right?
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
exactly. We were drawn exactly like molecules to each other.
Hmm.
We clicked. We had the right receptors for each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you move that into romantic relationships, or how do you see?
Hmm.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, so what I observed is that, somebody who was just an acquaintance, let's say there's somebody who I know who's just an acquaintance, they're probably, unless we happen to have a lot of things that align, they're probably never going to become my best friend because we don't have that type of chemistry. They'll probably always be an acquaintance. People who you kind of don't get so much would probably always kind of not get each other, even though we could work it out and talk it out, we still don't have that clarity of chemistry, that strong chemistry. And then the thing that really kind of highlighted this for me was that when I remember being, I don't know, in my 20s and I walked into a party with people from my high school and the people who I was close with in high school, and I saw an old boyfriend of mine, and like right away I just like had all the old feelings, like
Hmm.
all everything felt exactly the same as it used to feel. Now, I don't think that that's the case in every situation because there's some ex-partners of mine who I built up these walls against, who I
Hmm.
feel like I didn't feel safe with them anymore, and so I feel protected against those relationships. So I wouldn't walk in and feel all the same feelings that I did when we were first falling in love, but underneath that wall is
Hmm.
still the same basic energy between me and that person. I can feel it. You can feel like almost like a texture or a taste between, at least I can feel it between me and these ex-partners of mine. And I had a lot of ex-partners, so I have a lot a lot to study in myself, and I can feel that the vibe is always the same. The choices are different.
Right.
Maybe I already learned the lesson I needed to learn from that relationship, but the feeling between me and the person, it's almost a poetic thing. It's hard to put language to. And
I'm the
that's
same way. I have
mhm.
lots of ex-partners as well.
Uh-huh.
And because there's been no, like, whatever happened that caused us to not be partners didn't affect the underlying love that we have from one another. And
Yeah.
that's the chemistry, like I can still feel that. I'm still in a relationship with, like, friends, I have friendships with a lot of my exes still, and like
Mhm.
that love is really
Mhm.
there. It just is it went from, from romantic to something else, but that
Yeah.
underlying feeling of, like, yesterday I just talked with my college boyfriend,
Mhm.
and there's so much love between us, and there's no story around it, so we're free to express it with one another, like
Uh-huh.
it's mutual, of course, because chemistry is chemistry.
Mhm.
And it's just such a beautiful way to be in the world, to just let that be, without the story. Like, you don't have to make up a story about it, just to
Right.
feel that connection, to feel that love that was there from the beginning and that stayed. It
Yeah.
really is
Yeah.
beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. I do think that that's what happens is that people, like, somebody special comes into your life, and if you're open to it in the moment and you have that sexual attraction, that physical attraction, then it just makes sense to be together for that beginning, especially when we're younger. Well, explore and experiment,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just fun to test out different types of chemistry with different people. And I just feel like if all of the circumstances are right in the container, and you're like in a class together, or you're living in a dorm together, or you have the same group of friends, and suddenly you're spending all that time together, it's just great. Like that thing gets nurtured, and then at some point, I don't think, even though chemistry I believe is consistent over time, the environment definitely makes a difference, and the choices that we make for ourselves.
Um,
Yeah.
so what do you, I mean, we haven't really gotten into your full
The
theory yet,
theory.
but I know it so
Yeah.
well that I actually have a question about it.
Great.
So what if, like, sometimes things grow slow, like something that could
Hmm.
start as just an acquaintance or just a friend, like you spend more time with one another, and just does chemistry develop over time, or is it just unveiled over time, or was it just not actualized? Like like people go from just friends to
Hmm.
something more. Is
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
what is there still? How does your chemistry apply here?
Well, I think that there's different types of chemistry. And so some people might have like great, let's say, intellectual chemistry with each other, and other people might just like to do the same kind of thing, like two people who like to go golfing or whatever. And then some people might have like a really good teacher-student relationship, and other people best friends, and you know, there's lots of them, neighbor chemistry or whatever. And I think that if you have the foundations of personality, this is my thing I just came up with, personality chemistry, where you basically like each other, you like the person, and then you have a sexual attraction or physical compatibility. If those two things are there, I think a connection can build and sustain. My relationship that I'm in is a slow burn, was a slow burn, and that's because at the beginning I had some blocks up against my current partner. I just wasn't sure that he was the right person for me, and he had some blocks up against me, but we had an affinity, so we had that friend thing, and there was an attraction. But like the rest of the stuff is psychological. So these things that we're talking about around chemistry are less, I would say they're less psychological and more innate.
Mm,
The chemistry pieces are more innate. And then we have these defense systems where we protect ourselves and say, no, I don't want to be with that person. They're too old. They're too whatever. They live
the
too far away.
stories, right? You have
Yeah,
stories in your
yeah,
mind about it.
exactly. Which
Mm-hmm.
which are valuable. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
develop them to protect ourselves. So I do think that sometimes, we have to get to the point where we're going to let our guard down, where we get to know a person well enough that we are willing to, let's say, be sexual with them or spend more time with them. That it makes sense that we would kind of test things.
So then, okay, so say you meet somebody, so go back to like your dating years, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
you sit down for your cup of coffee, and chemistry's chemistry, this theory, like you can pretty much feel it right away,
Right
right?
away. Yeah.
But how do you distinguish between chemistry and the story? Because
That's a good question.
maybe they
Hmm.
remind you of somebody that you didn't have a good relationship with, or somebody who hurt you earlier, and
Right.
there's a projection. So then you're in your head, like how do you
Yes.
distinguish between chemistry and the story?
So that's, you almost just said it. What my answer is going to be is that if you're in your head, then you can't tell if it's chemistry. Heads don't know chemistry. Bodies know chemistry. So
Mm,
you have to kind of get out of your head, get into your whole body. Feel into the different energy points, into the different chakras. Do you connect on a body level? Do you connect on a heart level? Do you connect on a communication level? And that's kind of how I've done it for myself. Not everybody's going to be into the chakras, but you're going to feel it in your whole body. It's an experience, not a thinking. I
mm-hmm.
don't think that we could make a relationship out of thinking, and that's where a lot of our problems come in, with chemistry that's kind of seems out of balance, or one person feels rejected. All that stuff is in the mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rejection is in the mind, and rejection and projection are both in the mind.
Right, right. Hmm.
Yeah.
I can see how working with somebody to be in touch with their body, because many of us live as a head, that happens to be sitting on a body, but like to feel into those more subtle energies is a skill.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah, for life, not just for chemistry, for life.
Yeah.
Learning to feel your body and feel your
Hmm.
whole body. Yeah, but I would say feel for that. Feel for an earthier vibration with the person, and check if you're making stories up. Check if they remind you of somebody. Check if they trigger something. Check if you feel anxious. There's certain reactions to people that will get us spinning stories and strategizing. And as soon as we're doing those kinds of things, there may or may not be chemistry. It doesn't mean that there isn't chemistry, but
That
we
was my
can't
next question.
tell.
Right.
We,
That was my
we
next
can't feel
question.
it. Is
So
what?
like I had an experience where I met somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and later I realized, oh, they remind me of this other relationship, which is challenging for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it until afterwards when I sat with it, like what was going on there. I was like, oh, it's a memory. It reminds me of this past relationship, which is why I felt more guarded when I first
Mm-hmm.
met them. So then the next time I see them, perhaps there is chemistry there if
Mm-hmm.
I can get out of the memory that they remind me of somebody else. So it's not necessarily like a one and done, right? Like
Right.
if I get out of my head, maybe I will discover that there is chemistry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would you say yes, maybe?
I would say yes for sure, and probably them showing up is an opportunity to work on the old thing,
Oh,
not necessarily through
100%.
that new relationship, but in a way, it's going to, at least for me, I have a similar situation in my life where there's somebody who reminds me of that same person from high school when I walked into the room and I was like, ah! Now I have somebody else in my life who reminds me of that person, and I have a hard time being around them because it triggers all of these unresolved thoughts. There's still thoughts about that old relationship that are not settled in me. So I have a hard time just being present with this person because they really stimulate that. Almost, it is like a somatic memory. It's like almost like the
Mm-hmm.
things get stored in your body and then they just kind of come out to play at the worst time. But I take it as a gift to work
It
on
is.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it can be difficult to interact with other people. I mean, with this one person I'm thinking of, it's hard for me to interact with them
Mm-hmm.
because they remind me so much of this unresolved thing inside. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting too. Like, is the chemistry, I mean, I guess like the chemistry that you have with this person that reminds you of the other person, you still have you still have your unique chemistry with both of them, right? It's
Exactly,
not
but
like
they're different.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
And it's
interesting.
hard for me to feel into this chemistry with this newer person because
Right.
I'm so I go so
Triggers.
far,
Yeah.
so fast back. And there's something called the core erotic theme. Have you ever heard of that? The core erotic theme. There's an author named Jack Morin. He has this theory called the core erotic theme, and it's basically that something when we're first in our formative sexual time and we're becoming sexual beings, something gets us, like something grabs us, something excites us or makes us afraid, and it we develop a myth around that thing, and it becomes like a lifelong trigger for us of our vulnerability around attraction, sexuality, fantasy, wherever it goes, whatever
Mhm.
direction it goes. But for me, this same person I keep talking about, I hope they're not watching this, used to wear a baseball hat. And then it just like gave me this huge weakness for baseball hats. Like if I see a baseball hat, I don't care who's wearing it. I think they're the hottest person in the world, you know? And it can be fun for role play and things like that. Like I can use that for myself because I know that this like I know what my core erotic theme is.
Huh. It's almost
Yeah.
like maybe where kinks originate.
Yes. Uh-huh. Totally. Yeah, most people can probably trace their kinks back to something that was, yeah, connected to their core erotic theme.
I
You?
can. Oh yeah.
Did you want to talk about that?
No.
Okay, some other time.
Another time. Another podcast. We'll talk about kinks.
Right. That'd be good, actually. That'd be a
Hmm.
great podcast.
Hmm.
Yeah. So chemistry, let's go back to that just for a second, just so I kind of make the theory clear,
Yeah.
since that's what we're supposed to be
Yes.
talking about. So chemistry is romantic chemistry has the same properties and principles as scientific chemistry. And molecules have different ways of bonding. Some molecules bond really strongly, and some people bond really strongly. Some people bond kind of, circumstantially or weakly. They can easily let go of each other, like you were saying at first. Table salt, you see it and it's sitting there. It's sodium and chlorine, and they're or chloride, and
Chloride.
I think together, when sodium and chlorine get together, it makes sodium chloride.
Oh.
Yeah, but chlorine is the name of the atom, I think. We're so scientific over here. I need Nima's help. Anyway, when they get together and make sodium chloride, they have a weak bond, and the reason we know it's weak, it's a soluble bond, and if you put it into water, they break into their individual elements of sodium and chlorine. So that's like somebody who has like an acquaintance vibe. It's like, oh yeah, we get along, we can hang out, we go to the movies, but like we go home back to water and we're not really thinking about each other anymore. And then some molecules don't really bond at all. Everything has some kind of connection. It's just the way nature goes. It's not like there's zero bond between oil and water. They have like van der Waals forces or something like this, that like maybe like kind of like static. They have some kind of a relationship, but
If you
not
shake them up
much.
enough, it kind of mixes for a little while, and then
Yeah,
they settle
exactly.
back away, right?
Yeah, you can force them together. Yeah.
For a little while.
So so that's the idea, is that if we think about humans and molecules bonding, humans bond like molecules, then it's just easier. We can be a little bit more matter of fact about it. If you go out with somebody and you're just kind of feeling a little bit meh, you can just realize like, oh, I just have friend chemistry with them.
Mm.
It's not like I should like them more. I can't. I can't force myself to like them more. I can't force myself to have a sodium bond, with them we just don't have that. So, yeah. Sodium and sodium have like a really strong, they
Mm.
make a covalent bond and they bond really strongly and they're explosive.
I'm sure other people listening to this can totally like say like, oh yeah, that relationship didn't, like, when we met, it was clear it wasn't anything. Like, you can find examples, I'm sure, throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
For me, there's like, I remember years ago going on a date with somebody, and it was like, it was sweet. We definitely had a nice connection. But then like the kiss was like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, but like there was enough of like a nice connection that like I bypassed that and tried to force it. We
Mm.
tried to force it, both of us, and it was just weird and awkward. And then like we finally got to the point where we had to admit like, this isn't hot. And then it's like, nope, it's not. Like we both felt it, obviously, because it's chemistry's
Yes.
chemistry. And then we
Oh.
settled into a friendship, which is
Mm-hmm.
like letting go of what we thought we wanted it to be and tried to force a square peg in a round hole or whatever. And then
Totally.
just letting it be exactly how it wanted to be was like, stop, is like letting the river flow downstream. It was so much
Yes.
easier and so much more fun. It's like, yeah, it was just. And on the flip side, I randomly ran into some people at a river on a trail, like miles away from people. They just happened to be the
Mm-hmm.
spot that I wanted to be in. We
Mm-hmm.
chatted, and within 5 minutes I was like, I would totally go to Hawaii with you guys.
Right.
Like it was like, it was this like, there was a connection,
Yeah.
undeniable,
It's
like that.
undeniable and it's mutual. Like it's never
Yeah.
one-sided, right? True chemistry is never one-sided. Mm-hmm.
So then there's, I'm sure people would argue like unrequited love, there, where it
Yeah.
feels one-sided, where somebody's infatuated with somebody and it's not
Mm-hmm.
returned. Like I've had that feeling before too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you would say to that.
So if it's one-sided, if it feels one-sided, then either it is true chemistry. Let's say I'm attracted to somebody and I'm like, I could feel it, if it's real, then it is real. If you have personality and sexual chemistry, then it's in both directions. However, person over here might say no. I don't like Jewish girls. You're too small, like you're too old, you're too young, you're too this, you're whatever. It doesn't feel right. They can make up any reason. Like we all have volition. So the chemistry is there. This is in situation number one. The chemistry is there, but one person says, I put a block.
Because they're in their head, they have a story, or it reminds them
Sure.
something of the past, or like they're just making up, they're, for whatever reason, there's a block.
If for whatever reason, it could be I'm married, sorry, I'm not leaving my wife,
Right.
sorry, it's
Right.
not going to happen. Or they might not even think that they're attracted to me. Like somebody might be, let's say I'm attracted to a woman and I'm like, I know we have this chemistry, and she's like, I'm not attracted to women, and maybe that's just because she's conditioned to not be attracted to women. So they might believe it. It doesn't really matter, Everybody has that right to say no to a connection, and you just can't force a connection that isn't meant to happen. So it's like if they put a block, then it's not meant to happen, at least not right now. So people block either because of stories or because of beliefs or preferences or circumstances or intuition, doesn't really matter why, but you both people have to be a total fuck yes if for it to go forward, for
Mm-hmm.
people to want to. It has to be mutual. One person wants it even a little bit more than the other, it's not so good. You know, you have to have that like mutuality, and so I think seeking mutuality is the way to go, and it's so obvious when all the things align. You feel it, like everything starts sparking. You start clearing your schedule, they start clearing their schedule, you make time for each other, and it's mutually desired, and there's space in both people's lives for it. The one case is that there actually is true romantic chemistry, but this person says, no, sorry, you're going to have to figure this out on your own. I'm out. Or they might say, yeah, we have chemistry, but I'm not available.
Mm-hmm.
And the other case is like, I'm infatuated with you. I'm infatuated with you. And that's usually in the head. That's usually a projection. I'm making them be something. I have a story about them. I have a fantasy about our life together or who we could
Mm-hmm.
be. This
Mm-hmm.
happened with me with the wizard, right? In my book,
Mm-hmm.
like I was just like, I had him up on a pedestal. It's unstable because he's up on a pedestal. Second of all, like I'm not in my body, I'm in my head, so I can't even sense about the chemistry. I have no idea. I'm just like clinging on to this hope and fantasy, and I'm putting things onto him. I was putting ideas or what I wanted onto him. Yeah,
Yeah.
projection.
I've definitely had that situation. I'm sure anybody listening has also.
Most
It's
of us
pretty
have done
common.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, you talk about this in both of your book and also this article about how you use this to help make your dating years easier. Like how is
Yes.
this applicable boots on the ground?
What happened for me often, the way that it was going for me was that at the end of a date, I would know that I wasn't interested. Maybe I knew it at the beginning of the date, but I'd say it at the end. But basically, I had a pretty high bar for chemistry for most of my dating years, and I was really looking for something pretty specific. So I was often saying no, and at first people would seem like they were getting rejected, and that was what made me come up with something, because if they got rejected and they got their feelings hurt, then I felt like I had done something wrong, or like as though I could have done something differently. And anyway, my feelings got involved too, and I didn't want them to. And I could have been like, fine, deal with it, deal with your own thing. But I really wanted to stay related, and I just wanted to come up with something that made sense to both of us and that felt better. So I basically went from like, I'm not attracted to you. I mean, I wasn't necessarily saying it like that, but that's, if you're thinking of it in terms of rejection and preference, then that's kind of what I would be saying at the end of the day. Just like, sorry, but I'm not attracted to you. And then I'm creating that unequal thing of like, you're not good enough for me or something like that. But the chemistry perspective gave me this language that was, we don't have the chemistry that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a really specific kind of chemistry, and I can feel that we don't have that. And it just was received in a much more neutral,
Mm,
it was less judgmental. It was less specific about them, and just that I'm looking for this specific feeling And I can feel that we don't have that. And it
Well, it
just,
makes it more objective than subjective. So there's
yes,
nothing personal, right? It's not
it's not
personal,
personal.
right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it was the way that it was I was able to deliver it, and also the way they were able to take it. And it just always felt kind of more matter of fact and kind of no harm, no foul, peace out feeling between me and my dates.
Hmm.
So it really worked for me. Just on the sensing part, like for me as like, what am I even feeling for? Like I knew if I was
Right.
looking for something strong, like I knew if it was or wasn't there. I could tell
Yeah.
pretty quickly, pretty easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Was
remember?
there any ever pushback from any of the dates that you didn't feel chemistry with and said so? Did anybody try to argue their way that there was? You know?
Fight me on it.
Yeah.
Maybe the guy that I arm wrestled with.
What's that one?
Oh, what about that raw juice diet is the name of it in my book, where this guy was just super drunk and I was trying to help him and he was just so sloppy and he was just begging me to give him one chance. I'm like, there's no chance here. And then he called me judgmental. And I was like, I think I just know what I'm looking for. I'm not judgmental. You know, you can be however you want. I'm not judging you. It's just it's not the right match for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
We had a nice date.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back and talk to these dates and see how it landed for them, and
Mm-hmm.
like, because it really is it's a hard part of dating, the end of the date. Like, what do like not wanting to hurt people's feelings, but knowing that it's not right,
Yeah.
and like
Mm-hmm.
finding a way out that's more objective and kind at the
Yeah.
same time, like that's awesome tip for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's dating.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I know, like
And
that's a big one.
it ties in with the walk away, which is the practice that's connected to chemistry. So the idea with the walk away is that when you're actually on the date, it's the hardest time to talk about the date because of that thing of like, am I going to hurt your feelings and how do you feel about me and I don't even know how I feel about you, and there's just too much assessment going on and too many variables. So if you can just say, we're not going to talk about date number 2 until we both separate, and then we get a sense, we each get to sense what the chemistry feels like to us. And then we can come back and check in about it later. And if there's mutual interest to continue, we can go on a second date. And if either of us isn't interested, we just won't. And
One of the things you said before, which I like, which ties in with chemistry, is do you feel drawn back?
mm-hmm.
Like that's the chemistry. Do you feel drawn back, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like
And while we're on
magnets.
the date, yeah, while we're on the date, we can't sense it as well as when we leave. I mean,
Yeah,
every single time I got in my car, I knew exactly how I felt. I might have been
right,
confused while I was sitting there at the table, but as soon as I was on my way, I was like, no, or,
right.
I go out
Like,
again,
do you
you
want
know?
more? Are you drawn to want more, right? Or
Yes.
no? No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can feel it. You can feel the magnetism when you get a little further away.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so that's why I got well, I started the walk away to get myself out of there without having to say anything. But then it was a
Don't
really good
speak.
tool.
Don't speak.
But then it was a really good tool for mutuality, and it respected the other person and the fact that they too were in this cloud with us of altered state and all the
Mm-hmm.
questions and all the considerations. And so both of us got to separate and see how it felt. Yeah.
It's
And
great.
I still believe it's always mutual, you know. Maybe that other, I mean, for me, I also have the circumstantial thing in my life that I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of good friends. I have a busy life. Somebody else who's like really bored, they might have lower standards, you know? Like, even though I might not be the best chemistry possible for them, they might be like, yeah, I'd hang out with you every day. I'm so bored and lonely. I'd hang out with anybody all day, you know? So circumstances definitely play a role. And that's why it's always okay. We just have to give that to everybody. Everybody has that volition to say no, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody has the right to say no. And this is another really good one while we're on the word no is no is a one word sentence. It's no,
Mm.
we don't have to have any reasons in any, and it's really especially for good for women to know in cases of consent when they feel pressured or pushed. You don't have to have a reason why you don't want to do something. You can just, no is a one-word sentence.
That's
End of
great.
story. No,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important that we're okay with our own no and somebody else's no, that we respect them.
Hmm.
One of the best things is that when we say no to somebody and that no is heard and received, not always, but sometimes the no turns into a yes because because sometimes it's like, oh wow, they respect me. Now I'll be more vulnerable with them, you know?
Right.
Like, wow, they
Mm-hmm.
really took that well. I'm curious about this person who can take my no, you know, who can respect my no.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes a no will open things up, you know, a well-received no.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good title of something. The well-received no.
It just happened to a friend of mine. She was so afraid to tell this person who she'd been dating that she wasn't sure that they had like, she wasn't like 100% in with their chemistry. And he was just like so amazing about it that she was just like, oh, what a wonderful man. So it's great. It's great. It's great to flex our honesty muscles because otherwise we just keep going with like, I'm 75% in, but I'll just keep going. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
better than nothing. And then you never say anything and you have that little niggle. But if we can bring our truth to the surface, then we get to know who each other really is. And then we can make better
Do you
decisions.
ever consider doing workshops? Like not writing workshops, but doing workshops, like dating
Yes.
workshops?
Yeah, actually, you know, last night as I was falling asleep, I was thinking my next book has to be a workshop also. Like the book itself kind of is a workshop. And I was just thinking, like, it's time for me to start getting organized about how many weeks is it and what does it look like and how do we organize it. But yeah, I do
Yeah,
want to do that.
I think you should. I think this is valuable information. And
Yeah.
like, as a workshop, sharing each other, sharing with each other, like that's
Mm-hmm.
there's power of that. Like, self-paced, people can just buy the book and follow along, or
Mm-hmm.
like coming together as a group and hearing each other's stories and supporting one another. Like, there's so much power in that.
Yes,
Hmm.
totally. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start a Facebook page that'll be a group called Dating Empowered.
Oh, great.
And even if people are reading the book and they don't want to take the class, but they want to find a buddy, like people can kind of buddy read it together and work with each other on the exercises if they want. And yeah,
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
yeah. All right, I think we did it, Jess.
Great.
Any final words of wisdom?
Good work.
Happy Valentine's Day.
To you too.
Do you have plans for Valentine's Day?
No, it means nothing to me.
Really? Well, you can have a little extra chocolate at least on Valentine's Day.
I won't say no to that.
All right. Knew there was something special about that day. I better go eat some now just to get ready.
Practice chocolate every day.
Exactly. Every day I'm getting ready for Valentine's Day. Working on my Valentine's muscles.
All right, honey. Nice to
Okay.
chat. I love you.
I love you so much.
Mwah.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.